The 20th century, which encompasses advancement in technology, music, politics, culture, society, and even the largest wars, is widely acknowledged as a cruel epitome of historical eras. There are individuals who contemplate the events that unfolded within their immediate surrounding during this time, shedding tears of remorse while also finding solace in the conclusion of this tumultuous century. How is it possible that a century in which the evolution of technology and the internet was intended for the convenience of humans turned out to be one of the deadliest centuries? In this video, we delve into the most significant historical, political, and social occurrences that everyone should be familiar with. By the end of this presentation, I will elucidate the reasons behind the distinctiveness and inherent quality of this century. The 1910th century, known as a progressive era, spanned from the late 19th century to the early 20th century and were a period of social and political reform in the United States. Various movements and initiatives aimed to address societal issues and improve conditions for the general population. During the years 1900 to 1910, a dream that had always captivated humanity came true: human flight. It was a time of pioneering experimentation and breakthroughs in aviation. Notably, the Wright brothers made groundbreaking advancements in developing and piloting powered aircraft. In December 1903, they achieved the first sustained and controlled flight with their aircraft, the Wright Flyer, at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, making a monumental achievement in human history. This decade can also be called the decade of women, as suffragettes passionately fought for the right to vote, advocating for women's suffrage and gender equality. This era witnessed a significant wave of activism and advocacy as women across various countries, including the United States and the United Kingdom, organized and rallied for their political rights. One notable development during this time was the rapid expansion of electricity car networks, which replaced horse-drawn carriages and steam-powered trains. Additionally, advancement in automobile technology gained momentum in the 1910s. Mass production techniques such as Henry Ford's assembly line made automobiles more affordable and accessible to a wider population. Private car ownership increased, transforming the way people move within cities and expanding the range of travel options. Furthermore, significant achievements were made during this decade, including conquest of the North and South Poles. It was also in 1912 that the famous Titanic sank during this maiden voyage. World War I, also known as the Great War, took place from 1914 to 1918 and was a global conflict that involved many nations from around the world. It was primarily fought in Europe, but its impacts were felt on a global scale. The war began in July 1914 after assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, which triggered a series of diplomatic tensions and military alliances. The war involved two major alliances. The Allies consisted of countries such as France, Russia, the United Kingdom, and later joined by the United States, and the Central Powers, which included Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. The war resulted in significant casualties and devastation. Millions of soldiers and civilians lost their lives, and large parts of Europe were ravaged by the fighting. In November 1918, an armistice was signed, effectively ending the fighting. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially concluded the war and imposed harsh terms on Germany, which laid the groundwork for future conflicts. One of the deadliest events of this century, which occurred in this decade, was neither war nor revolution, but rather an outbreak of a disease that caused the deaths of millions of people around the world. The exact origins and reason for its unusually high mortality rate remain the subject of ongoing research and debate. The Spanish flu, also known as 1918 influenza pandemic, was a severe global outbreak of influenza that lasted from 1918 to 1919. It is believed to be one of the deadliest pandemics in history, infecting an estimated 500 million people worldwide and resulting in the deaths of tens of millions. Although it was named the Spanish flu, the origins of the virus are still uncertain. The pandemic coincided with World War I, and many countries involved in the war initially downplayed its impact to maintain morale. However, Spain, a neutral country, reported the outbreak openly, leading to the misconception that it originated there. The 1920s, often referred to as the Roaring Twenties, earned this name due to significant capitalism and economic development, with a powerful upper class and elite. It was during this time that the novel The Great Gatsby was written. The radio industry played a key role in the emergence of jazz, leading to what is also known as the Jazz Age. Jazz, an African-American music genre, blossoms alongside African-American culture in the 1920s. This era, known as the Harlem Renaissance or the New Negro movement, that was a cultural, artistic, and intellectual movement primarily centered in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City during the 1920s. It became a vibrant hub for African-American literature, music, visual arts, theater, and intellectual discourse. Jazz clubs and speakeasies became popular gathering places for artists, intellectuals, and members of the African-American community. The term Jazz Age was coined by writer F. Scott Fitzgerald in his novel The Great Gatsby to capture the vibrant and energetic atmosphere of the era. Additionally, the 1920s saw the rise of the flapper culture, which challenged traditional gender rules and embraced more liberated attitudes toward passion, sexuality, and lifestyle. Women asserted their independence by cutting their hair short, wearing shorter dresses, and engaging in activities that were previously considered unconventional. The dissolution of the Ottoman Empire took place in 1922, signifying the end of the centuries-old imperial power that had controlled territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire allied with Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Bulgaria, and faced significant military defeats. Allied forces occupied the empire's territories, and nationalities movements within the empire emerged, seeking independence or autonomy. In the aftermath of the war, the Ottoman Empire encountered internal unrest and external pressures. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk emerged as a prominent Turkish nationalist leader and successfully established a new Turkish government, which later became the Republic of Turkey. This historical shift resulted in the creation of new countries in the Middle East, including Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine, while other regions came under the influence of European colonized power. In 1930s, a time known as the Great Depression, one of the most severe economic crises in the history occurred. The Great Depression was triggered by the stock market crash of 1929 and had a profound impact on economics worldwide, particularly in the United States. During the Great Depression, there was a sharp decline in industrial production, a significant rise in unemployment rates, and widespread poverty. Banks failed, businesses closed, and people lost their savings, homes, and jobs. The economic hardship affected people from all walks of life, causing immense suffering and social upheaval. It was during this time that the play Death of Salesman was written. The 1930s is often referred to as the turbulent 30s or dirty 30s due to numerous challenges and hardships faced by people during that time, especially in the United States and Canada. The Dust Bowl, a period of severe dust storms, was caused by a combination of drought, poor land management practices, and strong winds. The prolonged drought and loss of topsoil devastated agricultural productivity, leading to crop failures, widespread poverty, and the displacement of farmers and their families. The dust storms were so severe that they engulfed entire communities, causing respiratory problems and further exacerbating the already dire economic conditions. In Oklahoma, the dust was blowing everywhere, making it difficult for people to see, and agriculture was completely lost. John Steinbeck's Dust Bowl trilogy captured the impact of this period. As a result, many people from Oklahoma traveled to California in the West and were referred to as Okies. World War II began on September 1, 1939, when Germany, led by Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. This act of aggression prompted Britain and France to declare war on Germany, making the start of the war in Europe. Germany, under Hitler's leadership, aimed to expand its territory and establish a totalitarian regime. The Nazis implemented policies of oppression, persecution, and genocide, targeting various groups, including Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, and political dissidents. The Holocaust, in which millions of innocent people were systematically murdered, remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. In my opinion, one of the greatest unforgivable crimes against the Jewish people happened in this century. During the course of the Second World War, the Nazis murdered nearly 6 million European Jews. This genocide is known as the Holocaust. The total Jewish population during that period was 9 million people, and 2/3 of them were killed in this massacre. The Axis powers, consisting of Germany, Italy, and Japan, sought to dominate vast regions, while the Allied powers, including the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union, fought to oppose them. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Theater, Japan aimed to establish dominance in the region. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought the United States into the war. The Pacific War saw significant battles like the Battle of Midway, the island-hopping campaigns, and the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which led to the Japan surrender in August 1945. By the way, it is worth worth noting that out of 2 atomic bombs launched, one of them did not explode and was neutralized en route to its destination. If it had detonated, the destructive power would have been equivalent to 10 Earth-sized planets. You may have seen in the news that the leader of North Korea frequently displays signs of aggression towards the American president and threatens America by showcasing military power in the media. But why does this happen? I will explain further. The Korean War, which took place from 1950 to 1953, was a significant armed conflict that occurred on the Korean peninsula. It began when North Korea, supported by the Soviet Union and China, invaded South Korea, which was backed by the United States and its allies. The war was a consequence of the division of Korea following World War II. In 1945, at the end of the World War II, Korea was liberated from Japanese colonial rule. The country was then divided into 2 separate zones along the 38th parallel, with the Soviet Union occupied the north and the United States occupied the south. The division aimed to establish temporary governance until the unified Korean government could be formed, but attempts to reunify the country failed, leading to prolonged period of tension. The 1960s marked the rise of the counterculture that challenged societal norms. The younger generation rebelled against established institutions, advocating for peace, freedom, and equality. This era witnesses movements like the hippie movement and the anti-war movement, particularly concerning the Vietnam War. In the realm of music, the 1960s brought about the cultural revolution with genres like rock and roll, folk, psychedelic rock, and soul gaining popularity. It is worth mentioning that significant advancements in space exploration were also made during the 1960s, including the first human spacewalk and the historic moon landing. Furthermore, the feminist movement gained momentum during the 1960s, advocating for women's rights, gender equality, and reproductive rights. The 1960s were also characterized by Cold War tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. The decade also witnessed political associations such as those of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. The 1970s is known as the disco era in America. Disco music emerged in the early 1970s and gained significant popularity throughout the decade. It was characterized by its danceable beats, lush orchestration, and a focus on the rhythm section. The 1970s was a time of when disco clubs and dance floors became popular social venues, and disco fashion and culture had a significant influence on the mainstream. But there was no joy in the Middle East. In the heart of the Middle East, a revolution was brewing. The Iranian Revolution, also known as the Islamic Revolution, took place from 1978 to 1979 and resulted in overthrow of the monarchy in Iran. The revolution led to the establishment of an Islamic Republic under the leadership of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. The revolution had its roots in widespread discontent with the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who had been in power since 1941. It is noteworthy that the strong protests in Iran for a year were triggered by issues such as the hijab and the killing of Mahsa Amini, reflecting people's dissatisfaction with the Islamic government. If you take a closer look, you'll find Afghanistan's situation next to Iran. From 1979 to 1989, the Soviet-Afghan War unfolded, pitting Soviet forces against the Afghan Mujahid, rebel groups opposing the Soviet-backed government in Afghanistan. The war had far-reaching consequences for Afghanistan and the surrounding region. It resulted in extensive destruction, the displacements of millions of Afghan civilians, and a significant loss of life. The conflict also had destabilizing effects on neighboring countries, as refugees sought to refuge in Pakistan and Iran. I believe the 1990s was a golden decade for gay liberation and LGBTQ rights. Several countries and jurisdictions implemented important legal reforms during this time. For instance, in 1993, Denmark became the first country to legalize same-sex registered partnership, providing legal recognition to same-sex couples. Other countries, including Norway, Sweden, and Iceland, following suit in the subsequent year. In 1996, the Netherlands became the first country to legalize same-sex marriage. Visibility and media representation also played a significant role. The 1990s witnessed an increase in the visibility of LGBTQ+ individuals in the media. Popular TV shows such as Will and Grace and Ellen Show features gay characters and storylines, contributing to greater acceptance and understanding. The dissolution of the Soviet Union took place between 1989 and 1991, resulting in the disintegration of the largest socialist state in the world. The process began with the Baltic states declaring their independence, followed followed by other republics like Ukraine, Belarus, and Armenia. The dissolution had significant consequences domestically and internationally, marking the end of the Cold War era. It led to the emergence of Russia as a successor state to the Soviet Union, inheriting its seats on the United Nations Security Council and other international obligations. The Gulf War, also known as the First Gulf War or Operation Desert Storm, was a major conflict that took place between 1990 and 1991 in the Persian Gulf region. The war primarily involved Iraq, led by President Saddam Hussein, and the coalition of international forces led by the United States. In August 1990, Iraq, under Saddam Hussein's leadership, invaded its neighboring country, Kuwait, citing economic and territorial disputes. The United Nations Security Council promptly passed resolution denouncing Iraq's action and demanding an immediate withdrawal from Kuwait. This resolution imposed economic sanctions on Iraq and authorized the use of force if Iraq failed to comply. On February 28, 1991, a ceasefire declared, marking the end of the active combat operations. Iraq accepted the ceasefire terms, which included the withdrawal of Iraqi forces from Kuwait and destruction of certain weapons, and the acceptance of future UN inspections. This Persian Gulf, located south of Iran, has historically been known as the Persian Gulf. Some Arab countries have attempted to rename it as Arabian Gulf in recent media usage. However, it is important to note that the internationally recognized name is the Persian Gulf. Additionally, Iran is not an Arab country, but rather predominantly Persian.